The red means we're recording.
Oh.
So. Surprise.
Upgrading
Right.
the pause button.
Okay. Hi, I'm Anita Brown.
And I'm Jill Johns.
This is the Pause Button 2.0.
Upgrade your self-care.
Hi. Hi.
5.
Yes. Gosh, we're already on episode 5.
I know. It's been exciting. People are listening.
I'm really excited to get the feedback we're getting. No, I'm really excited to get the feedback. I'm like, please write to us.
Yeah, keep telling us stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I like the feedback that, yes, I like the ego stroke stuff. Like, tell me how great we are. But I also really like the fact that we're really creating thought in people, and people are having really insightful nuggets to share.
I like how people are saying their experience, but then also like going a little further or kind of disagreeing with like their experience isn't what we said.
I agree.
And I like that too.
Me too. Because that's how it feels like an extension of the conversation.
Yeah.
Because if we had all the listeners here with us while we were talking, there would be differing opinions.
Yeah.
And we'd have a chance to share them. Because I'm really clear on the fact that this is just my perspective that I'm bringing to self-care and upgrading my self-care. And I know that it's just been my journey. And so it's nice to hear from other people where they are and what they're working on and what they're trying. What's working, what's not.
And I like when they bring that conversation to us because I guess it allows for it to be a conversation and a discussion and not about like who's right in this.
Yeah, the last thing that I wanted is for us to have to be like the experts,
right,
or feel like we're the teachers,
right?
Because that was the whole point behind like our tagline is like, no, we're just real women having real experiences, having a real raw conversation.
Exactly.
And so this is just our conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we're going to talk today more about that.
Let's talk about the fact that we aren't the expert.
Yeah.
But you know who I am the expert of? My own journey.
Yep.
And I think that's the message. Are you the expert in your journey?
I am. And I guess I select other experts in their field to help me with my journey, to help make informed decisions, but I'm still the expert on what I need at any given time.
I'm hearing the distinction of you're the expert on you, but then you're calling on experts to learn from. So you're like, you're both sides of the coin. You're the expert on yourself, but you're engaging experts from other people. I like that.
Yeah. And I haven't always been like that. And maybe sometimes I'm still not. Like, I still want somebody else to tell me, like, what I should do. Or, you know, like, what is the right path or the right thing or something. But definitely I was like that a lot more before, like, the transition period, you know, in my life.
I hadn't thought about that till we just started having this conversation, but every year I pick a word of the year. I go through this kind of robust process with my coach, and we figure out my word for the year. And this year for 2018, my word was disciple. And to me, that's what's coming up in this conversation. To me, the disciple, and the way that I described it when I was picking that word, was that I sit at the foot of the masters, whoever those thought masters are, and I learn from them. But then I also internalize that for myself to change my life. But then a disciple can also go out and talk to other people about what you've heard from the master, right? So that is interesting that that's coming up in this conversation. So where do you think being an expert in yourself comes into play? Like, what does that look like for you on your journey?
I have often needed permission, I think. I've often looked to other people for permission to do things. And I think when I really look back on it, I think it was my mom. I always was looking to my mom. Like, I would throw out ideas to my mom about what I may want to do, or a job I might want to pursue, or I'm kind of feeling this way about my job and it's not so great, or my relationship or something, and kind of try to see like what her response is, to see if I have permission to be mad at somebody, or if I have permission to pursue a dream, or not want to keep a job or something. So in my family, it's always been like my mom and then my husband, and then outside of that, very personal, like giving somebody else just like very in my personal space the power over me. I have maybe looked to, in my career as a massage therapist, I've looked at the educators out there as like, they know how to heal people.
Right.
They know what to do, and I don't, and I need to just learn their method.
Right.
And then as if I can be an expert in their thing, then I will be able to have that kind of mastery over somebody's pain. And that's just, I've just completely given that up, and everyone has got great nuggets, and but then when I really assimilated into like how I practice, what I observe when I'm working, and then using their information as I'm working and seeing how that plays out, I think it ends up being where I become my own, I guess, expert in my own craft. I still don't have any mastery over somebody else's pain. That's their body,
What I'm seeing in my mind as you're talking is a mosaic where it's like, instead of getting the blueprint from your mom or the blueprint from your husband of what you're supposed to, or the blueprint from your teacher, instead you're taking a nugget, and all these nuggets from all these different people are like being laid into this mosaic that's creating who you are and how you want to handle the topic or the situation or whatever. But it's a compilation of nuggets from all these different people that you're assimilating and making your own.
Kind of. So like definitely the career piece, I think, like taking the mosaic in my massage career and making my own thing that I have to offer others. But with my mom and my husband, I don't look to them anymore necessarily. Like, I think actually that was erroneous to keep looking to them to have permission and let them be the expert in what I should do.
Okay.
I had to take back that power.
Yep.
And to set up boundaries, so that emotional boundaries, particularly with my mom, and she was unaware, of like what the whole dynamic is. Yeah, she didn't have any of that, so she wasn't asking for that power. But it's more of like a boundary. I had to be able to process, like, if I'm not happy at a job, I have to be okay with, like, that's okay to be unhappy. Like, I have to give myself permission to not be happy.
Right.
And then I can make a decision about that, and then I can tell people what my decision is, and be kind of like, this is what I'm going to do now, or this is what I have been doing, instead of having an emotion and taking my emotion and saying, is this okay?
Yeah.
And then what should I do with
And
this?
then if they say, no, that's not okay, then what are you supposed to do?
I know. And then I'm like, oh, now I have to change my own inner feeling, and that's really hard.
That is hard.
So that's how it's shown up in my life. And I think that when we have in our manifesto the part about everyone's their own expert, when I think of it as that piece, like, we're our own expert over our experience in life, and no one else gets to tell us if that experience is permissible,
Right.
or
And because we're the expert in our own life, we can change the scripting whenever we want to and whenever we need to, without having to ask the permission, like you're saying.
Yeah, that's how it's shown up for me. What about you?
Yeah, I would say mine is undulating, like up and down. Like there are times when I come across, or when I engage in life, like wildly independently and kind of in this like rogue, pioneerish cowboying, like I don't care what anybody thinks, I'm just out doing my own thing. And then with equal intensity, I can drop off of that and be very insecure and very fear-based and very needy as far as other people validating who I am, what I'm doing, the decisions that I'm making. And I have the same subset of people that I need the validation from again and again and again. And sometimes the players change based on who's in my life at the time, but they always take that role of, kind of the paternal figure or the romantic figure or the business advisor figure. Like I have these like characters that play over and over in the story of my journey that I'm constantly replacing the names with. But it's again and again and again. It's like, oh yeah, I've had to become self-aware of the fact that like I'm in the trough and I'm seeking the validation from these 3 players again, and I have to wait till I get back up on the peak, because I shouldn't be relying on those characters to tell me if my story is acceptable or not. No one knows what's going on in my brain besides me and the complexity of everything that's in my brain. So to think that anybody else could be my advisor, or to think that I should take insight from anyone else, they just don't have all the data, so they wouldn't be able to give good advice anyway. And for me to think that I could do that to another person, same thing. Like I don't know all the complexity of what's going on in them. So it really just boils back down to I'm the only one that can really know for me.
So it sounds similar. It sounds like your paternal figure, the romantic partner, the business thing. It sounds like it's a similar experience with as far as giving your power or whatever to somebody else.
And I'm not giving my power away all the time, and I'm not giving my power away when I'm at the peak of my cycle. But I get into the troughs of the cycle, and that's really that for me. When I've been observing, like over the course of the journey of my 43 years, right, like I have these, I see it as like undulating highs and lows and highs and lows, and they're not evenly distributed. But when I start dipping down into one of the lows, the people that I seek the validation from, or the people that I seek this, I consider it like a knight in shining armor kind of thing, where it's like I just want someone to swoop in and protect me and save me and fix it for me. And I'm not very good at being discerning about those people, and I'm not very good about maintaining my boundaries during that period of time. And so it can end up being destructive in the long run.
So can you say more about those times though? Like what puts you in those troughs?
And so the one that I'm thinking of the most is when I was pushed out of the nest of corporate and found myself as an entrepreneur. I struggled a lot. Like it was hard. I had a magazine. I spent about a year and a half creating something that didn't exist, and then a year and a half into it I was finally starting to get some traction, and then that's when I got my breast cancer diagnosis. So all of a sudden my energy and focus and attention shifted, and so I felt like my foot was off of the accelerator on the magazine, and rightly so, because I needed to be taking care of my physical health. But I would just craved for someone to come in and take the magazine from me and to help me and fix it and whatever. And so because I was in an insecure place physically, financially, emotionally, that I believed that this person that presented themselves to kind of be my savior, the one that was going to buy the magazine from me, the one that was going to keep the magazine going, and the legacy of my hard work was going to take off. And so I believed him. And he turned out to be a swindler, and it turned out to not be a good decision in the long run. But it was like I see that pattern for myself again and again, where it's like I kind of get into this phase of desperation or whatever it is, and then someone kind of comes along and I think that they're going to be my savior, and then they're not. And so, and when I look back over my past, that has happened at multiple times throughout my life. And so that was 3 years ago. And so I've tried really hard since that time to catch myself and know that, I'm starting to slip. I'm starting to go down that downward trough. So at this point, Jill, warning, like, Don't look for the knight in shining armor. Don't expect somebody to come in and swoop in and save you. Don't take a bad deal. Wait till you get to the other side of it and then make a decision when you're on a higher flying disc or when you're in a non-wobbly place or better feeling place. So that's just kind of how it's shown up for me.
Do you think that has something to do with like your creator personality, where like you have a ton of energy and then you for a project and then you get on a downslide for it, or is it during those down moments after you've created the whole thing and then you swing down from it?
Yeah, I think that's probably part of it. Energetically, I have always had the most energy at the beginning of a project, getting something started and off the ground and launched, and then yes, it does taper off on the back end. So yeah, I think that's a good point to keep that in mind as well for the future, as I have more projects coming up, like kind of being aware of when that threshold is of me starting to maybe be looking for the savior to come in and save me, the project, whatever it might be. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I mean, I think it's interesting to think about trusting and being confident that we are the expert. I think we spend so much of our time and energy looking at other people and judging other people and being the expert on, oh, you should do this, or you should think that, or, I know what's best for you. We become the experts on everybody else, but we're really like just scratching the surface. And if we turned that much energy and attention on all of the things that we're seeing in other people and all the assumptions we're making and judgments, but turned all that internally to just become really aware with ourselves, I think we'd be setting ourselves up for a lot more success.
I have two things I'm thinking of. One is when you got your cancer diagnosis, and you don't think about cancer until you get it or something, and so then all of a sudden you have to either become an expert when you're really in a stressful spot, or let somebody else completely be the expert and then just
relinquish control.
Yeah. Or a kind of combination of those two, of like, an interplay. And I'm wondering how it was for you.
For me, I went from the day that I didn't even understand what like cancer stages were when nobody in my family had cancer. Like, it was one of those where it's like, I've heard people talk about like stage 3, but I'd be like, how many stages are there? I don't know. To very quickly, I joke and say I got like a PhD in cancer. And that's my type and my style, right? Like, here's a new problem, here's a new challenge, and I will do the deep dive. Like, I was casting my net wide and deep on everything having to do with cancer because I wanted to be the expert. I wanted to know what my options were. I wanted to feel knowledgeable and empowered every step of the way. And and it was really what got me through feeling like I was in control of the situation and the process, to the point where after a while my husband was like, Jill, you're not allowed to Google anything anymore now. Like, you're done with Google. So that was interesting. But now working with cancer patients locally, what I find is that some are really willing to just float and let other people tell them what to do, and aren't interested whatsoever in educating themselves or advocating for themselves, and they're very comfortable with that. So if someone would have told me that I had to float and completely like relinquish all the control, it would have made me crazy. So for me, that's what I did. I learned everything I possibly could and didn't necessarily follow treatment plans and protocols that were recommended to me. But what I did end up doing, and the protocol I did end up following, I believed in so much. And I was so comfortable and confident with that. I'm really pleased with my outcome and where I am in the journey.
Did you have a lot of experts coming at you? Suddenly, like lay people experts, like from couch to expert.
Well, okay, so to make the biggest gift and the hardest piece in my family was that I am the black sheep, right? Like I went to college, I moved to Europe, I flew hot air balloons, like I had this like crazy life while my brother was going to med school. Mm-hmm. And while my brother was in med school, he met his wife, who she just happened to be a surgeon. Mm-hmm. And so fast forward 15 years now, and my brother is a doctor and his wife is a surgeon specializing in breast surgeries. And here I am, the world traveling wanderlusty divorced like black sheep child living in Georgia that is the one that's diagnosed with cancer. And so from the medical perspective, there's like a protocol that you follow, like, oh, you have a diagnosis, you have this kind of cancer, you have these kind of markers, here's the formula, here's what you're supposed to follow, like, so as long as you follow this, like, we're good. And so the formula that was laid out for me, I was very uncomfortable with. But that formula was also the thing that my brother and my sister-in-law were comfortable with, because it was the formula. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden, I'm not comfortable with the formula, and I'm going with a different plan. And people are like, why don't you just follow the formula? Because that's what the experts say to do. You need to follow this formula. And I had a lot of valid reasons why I didn't want to follow the formula. But it made my family very uncomfortable, because they loved me. Like, my mom didn't want me to die, and she wanted, like, listen to your brother, he knows this stuff, and I did. I really took to heart what they were saying and why, and I understood why, but at the end of the day, I had to do what was right for me. And so that was the hardest part, was because internally in my family, I actually had trained experts in that topic, and I went kind of against their recommendation. And then the second layer, outer layer to that, is when you tell someone you have cancer, everyone else tells you about everyone else they know that has cancer, and they all want to share their thoughts and opinions with you about what happened with them, or what they did, or what they didn't do, or how it didn't work, or how they're dead, or all that kind of stuff. And so that's not very helpful in the process. I don't recommend it.
So I think it would be good right now to talk about how you establish boundaries or develop the boundaries with those people that were offering unsolicited, and then also with your family members who actually were experts that you weren't going to be following. Like, what?
This is where I give huge kudos and huge props to my husband, because he was the one that kind of wedged himself between me and my family, kind of unbeknownst to my family, and just kind of like pushed them out and back and created space for me to be able to vacillate in the middle as I was needing to make my decision. I scheduled and canceled and scheduled and canceled and scheduled and canceled my surgery 3 times. And the first surgery that I scheduled and the actual surgery that I ended up getting were radically different. And so in that process, I would schedule something and then cancel it and schedule it and cancel it. And my family just wanted me to hurry up and pick one and stick with it and then do that and be that, so that they could get over with and like we could move on. But Ken did a really good job of wedging himself in there and letting me know that there was no rush, that with the type of cancer that I had, I could take all the time that I needed. And then in that process, I learned to trust my intuition. It's really when I reawakened my mindfulness practice to really know at the center of who I was that I have the answers. Like, I need to quiet my mind. I need to quiet the chatter. I need to stop hearing my mom's voice, dad's voice, brother's voice, sister-in-law's voice, husband's voice, kids' voices, all these voices. I needed to just like quiet them and get calm and get centered and get still and listen for the nuggets that my inner voice had for me. And every time I waffled, it was me trying to rationalize why my inner voice was wrong, you know? And eventually, finally, when I just kind of like, I let go, like in our e-workbook, right, there's the picture of the balloons with the strings and they're floating away, and it's like I was holding all of those balloons, like, have this surgery, have that surgery, get this kind of drug, that kind of drug, and I just went like, it was very anticlimactic. It wasn't like a big announcement happened in my life. I just like opened my hands and the balloons just floated away. And then I was just able to make a very peaceful decision that I've never regretted. But I like the idea of getting to that point of still, you know, and I knew that I was there. I knew that I was still, and I knew that I was the expert, and I knew that what I was doing was what I needed to do, and I didn't have to explain it or justify it anymore to anyone. And then the amazing thing is that everybody supported me. Like, everyone got behind. Like, it was once I was so clear and peaceful and calm about what my decision was going to be, so were they. And then they just were behind me and totally on board and fine with it and supportive, and never again did I hear like a naysaying word.
So was that the time that you kind of got reconnected with that 19-year-old self who was into the celestine prophecy?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
That whole journey, that whole summer, you know, and I dismiss it and call it, oh, it was my woo-woo summer where I got back. But it was like, really what that summer did between learning laughter yoga was like, I learned how to laugh again, and I learned how to have joy and silliness and fun and playfulness. And then I, you know, all the other pieces of what I think I did that summer, like I did some chakra stuff and some crystal stuff and some tarot stuff and some readings and all kinds of nature walks and all that kind of stuff. And it wasn't about the tarot or the crystals it was about learning to trust myself again. I had really lost faith in myself. And so that summer, it was kind of like when I took like you said, took my power back. Like, no, Jill, like, you know what you need. Trust yourself and don't justify yourself to anyone, and just take back your power.
So with the people that were just maybe not the inside circle but the outer layer, just one layer out or whatever, that would offer unsolicited advice, or I think sometimes advice is masked as like concern, or you know, or whatever, they kind of go hand in hand, where I'm concerned about you, so I have to offer you all these things. How did you establish boundaries with them, or how did you keep liking people who did that to you?
Is this the conversation about pruning, or do we have that conversation later?
Well, we can introduce it now
pruning,
and have a whole other one.
I pruned a lot that year. Pruning the people and the thoughts and the activities and the limiting beliefs that were not serving me.
Did the concept of boundaries actually enter your awareness during that time, or was it just kind of like a natural thing to do?
Oh, the concept of boundaries. So I come from a coaching background, right? So it was introduced, and it's something that we work with our clients on a lot. But the true application of like, this is a unbreachable boundary in Jill's world and in Jill's life, I think that was when I really got the language for it. Like, I had practiced it before, unbeknownst to me, and I had like encouraged other people to create them in dysfunctional experiences, but to actually create it for myself and live by it and be so successful with it, that was, that's the best experience that I've had, that I had up to that point with boundaries.
That's an empowering thing to start practicing boundaries. Yeah. So you pruned people. Did you keep the ones that didn't offer to be advice givers, or did you set up a boundary and then they respected it and so they were allowed to stay? Or any other option that's out there?
I think, so for me at the time, I would say, like, so my boundaries and my pruning has been more in the last 2 years than I don't even want to say that like cancer or the cancer treatment process was when I really started pruning, but it was more around the last couple of years of awareness of my energy, right? So my energy is really what helps me know that I need a boundary. Like if I'm feeling, we talk about it with like, when we talk about the emotional guidance scale, it'll make more sense, but it's like I can be energetically feeling a certain way and people can come into my space and they can really be the energy vampire where they're like sucking all my energy from me. And some people will suck your energy just like for a short amount of time or around a certain subject or a certain day, but then there's other people that every time they come in, like that's just like, it's like Pigpen from the Peanuts, where they bring that dust and that swirl with them every single time. After my cancer diagnosis, after my treatment, when I was in kind of the recovery phase, that's when I was like, I don't need that in my life anymore. So it wasn't actually during my treatment that I got that, but it was probably about a year out from it that I really started saying, I get to choose who I surround myself with and the thoughts that I surround myself with, and the pruning really happened then. It wasn't worth it. Yeah. How about you?
I haven't had a cancer diagnosis.
Good.
So how about me specifically? What?
Well, I was just thinking about pruning.
Oh, pruning. I don't know so much that I've had to prune because I haven't had a lot of people in my life, I guess. And I think maybe some people have pruned just naturally. I don't know. I certainly haven't had a pruning experience where someone's trying to be an expert and I have to like shut them down, out of my life. But I also haven't had, I guess, like a ton of people in my life where I've had to kind of start letting people go in that way. I guess like the people I've spent time with, like actually have given my energy to, have been on purpose already,
right?
In a way,
right? So more discerning in onboarding.
Yeah, I guess so. And I don't have a lot of time that I spend outside of my house anyway. Like I'll go to work. I don't have girls' nights, or I don't have a lot of that kind of stuff going on anyway. Right. So I haven't had pruning in that way.
Yeah, so we've got so today we started the conversation with really understanding what it means to be an expert, and to be an expert in yourself, in your own self-care.
I think there's a lot of different ways that we give away our power, or we let other people be the experts in our lives. And I think with me and my asking for permission for everything, all my ideas, all my emotions, I didn't even see that for a really long time as letting somebody else be the expert over me.
Right.
But then once I realized that I was allowed to have the emotions, and I realized then how much I let other people be the expert in my life. And so that's really, really my big one. I haven't had a health thing where where somebody actually is an expert in their field, and I have to choose whether or not I'm going to let them be my expert, or whether I'm just going to let them give me information and then continue on my path.
Well, and I think for me, realizing that outside of health scares, I have ups and downs, and times where I feel more in control and more out of control, and that I'm more susceptible to leaning on someone outside of me when I'm in the trough than I am when I'm at the peak. And then when it comes down to actual medical issues. Everyone has a different way of being, but I know that for me, my way of being is to be able to take in all the information, really feel comfortable that I've got all the knowledge that I need, and then get quiet and trust myself and trust my intuition and know that I'm not trying to hurt the experts by defying them or going against their recommendation, that it's more that I'm trying to support myself by listening to what my inner being is telling me that I need. So it's, again, look at how different both of us are. And I think that's what we want people to know, is that there's not a right or wrong, but that it's important for them to examine their own
I think we do all have our own answers if we quiet our minds enough and listen to that very almost like a whisper of a voice, or just the first little feeling that bubbles up is usually that our answer.
Yep. I agree. Yay. Good.
Okay.
Good.
We had a good conversation.
We did have a good conversation.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.